Hey guys, what's going on and welcome back to the channel. Slightly different video today than usual, although not that unusual for this summer. With the Premier League season fast approaching, I thought it might be good to do a prediction video for the Premier League. I've never done one of these live on camera before. I've made predictions for the Premier League, but not like this. However, I did predictions for the Euros, and I didn't do too badly there, although it was my predictions from the knockout stages that were a little bit more consistent. This is a 38-game season, with 20 teams involved. Not quite as easy to predict as a knockout tournament. Although first, frankly, is I've used a website called worldfootball.net. It allows you to put in your predictions for all the games in all 38 weeks and then predicts the final table. Now, of course, there's going to be a slight exaggeration to that table because it's not going to account for those wild upsets that much. However, I put a few of them in where I think they might happen. However, Manchester City remain largely unscathed on that front and are topped by a reasonable margin. I don't think the margin will be quite as dramatic as it is. It's over 10 points. I don't think the margin will be quite as big as that at the end of the year. I think they will be slightly closer to the chasing pack this time around. When you consider Manchester City's squad this season, it's essentially the same squad they had last year. Without Aguero, who they didn't really have last year anyway, and with Jack Grealish. So, can't really see them doing any worse. Also, they have a Brazilian wonder kid coming in January called Kaiki. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce his name. Football Manager players would be aware of him. He arrives in January. He's 18. He's Brazilian. Probably quite an exciting talent. He's a right winger, though. You don't really need them right now. Probably he'll go out on loan. But Manchester City, most likely to win. Second through fourth, 3 points separate them on this prediction table I did after 38 game weeks. 3 points. The order at the end is Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United. That's your top four. I'm not going to be dramatic and predict someone to sneak into that top four. That's your top four. Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United. These three, I think, might be in literally any order. I also wouldn't be surprised by any of these three winning it if Manchester City have one of those years where they decide not to be as good as they should be. Which has happened before. I think second through fourth will be quite an interesting fight. Well, I think the top four is going to be a very interesting fight this year. It's going to be the closest title I think we're going to have had in a while, and the most exciting one because there's going to be more participants. With the supposed arrival of Varane at Man United, I'm going to start there. With the supposed arrival of Varane at Manchester United and Sancho's already arrival at Manchester United, I haven't seen many predictions yet, but I feel like people might be sleeping on Manchester United. Little bit. Just a little bit. I genuinely believe Manchester United went under the radar last year. They were second in a year where everyone else apart from Manchester City had a wobble. Yes, there are reasons for it. Obviously, Liverpool had massive injury things. Chelsea didn't really actually have a wobble when you look at it in the end. Frank Lampard was sacked just before a run of really easy games, which he would have won anyway. So, he would have finished top four, I think, in the end, regardless. Would have won a Champions League. I'll give Tuchel that one. But I think Frank would have got top four in the Premier League regardless. And it would have been more exciting along the way for viewers, rather than 1-0s every week. However, Manchester United were second, and they didn't really have a wobble. The start wasn't particularly brilliant, but after that point, just steadily got the way through the season without fuss, never in danger of dropping out of the top four once they got to behind Manchester City. Never really looked in danger of dropping out of that top four. And got to the end of the season without really any major drama. Without really any major trophies to be contending with, apart from the Europa League, which I won't open that wound. But it's that squad again, plus possibly Varane, plus Sancho. And they were second last year. Manchester United, very good chance of being second. Good chance of winning it, I think. I don't think they will. I got Man City there, but wouldn't be surprised if Manchester United won it. Wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea won it. Tuchel could 1-0 his way to the title in the most Portugal way possible, which is kind of odd for a German manager. But German efficiency, there we go. But in a similar way to how Portugal won the Euros and how Tuchel won the Champions League last year, they could just efficiently get their way to the title again. It's not going to be exciting if they do. However, Lukaku arriving might change that. Obviously, the manager was the major factor between the randomly scoring Frank Lampard era and the 1-0 Tuchel era. Same set of players, so it's obviously the manager involved there. But if Lukaku gets goals as well as the efficiency of Tuchel's defensive strategy, then it could be a little bit more exciting for Chelsea fans this year. Although I don't think they'll argue with I don't think they'll argue against the methods when they got a Champions League victory. Liverpool, they'll just recover. They had the players. They were just mostly injured last year. That squad's largely back. Different person's injured now to start the season with. But hopefully that's not a sign of things to come for Liverpool. If they avoid injuries, I think still most likely to be second. Chelsea still most likely to be third, and Man United most likely to be fourth out of this order. But wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised if second through fourth are in any order. I think Manchester City are still that little bit most significantly likely to be first. I'm more certain of first than I am second through fourth. Put it that way. But it will be these four. Fifth is my first major asterisk because it depends on the future of one singular player. Spurs. I've got Spurs in fifth. I think they might do all right if they keep Kane. If they lose Kane to Manchester City, that makes Manchester City's victory all the more likely, of course. But if they lose Kane to Manchester City and they replace him with Lautaro Martinez, then I don't think they'll be too far further down. But I think they might be slightly further down. Martinez, fantastic player, but not going to be as effective as Kane. If they have Kane and Martinez for whatever reason when the season begins, then it might be a little bit closer to the top four. It's worth noting in the predictions there's 17 points between Manchester United and Tottenham in fifth. 17 points after 38 games. I think it's going to be a slightly breakaway top four. But Spurs, I think, are going to edge fifth. Fifth, sixth, and seventh are also separated by 3 points on my worldfootball.net predictions. So I think they'll just pip it. Can't really explain it too much. And in my brain, I've got Koundé going to Tottenham because it's happening by Football Manager save rather than Chelsea. So I'm thinking maybe there's a subtle bias in thinking they're going to be more defensively solid than they are. But they do have a defensive signing coming in, rumoured to be coming in. Martinez might be coming in, Kane might be leaving. So it's going to be interesting. I think without being hampered by Mourinho, it's going to be an interesting season for Spurs. I like Nuno Santos as a manager. I don't know really what happened last year. I think there was pressures with just personal life when it came to him because the reason for leaving Wolves in the first place was, I think, to be closer to his family, who he hadn't seen because of the coronavirus. In fact, he ended up at Spurs. Surprised the hell out of me because I thought he was going to be moving back to Portugal. However, he's at Spurs. I like him as a manager. I think he'll do well. Sixth, I've got as Aston Villa. They may have lost Grealish, but they've signed Danny Ings, Emi Buendia, and Leon Bailey, who I do kind of rate a little bit. I think he's one of those underappreciated players in general in the top 5 leagues. But Danny Ings, massive signing. Watkins was a good striker without being a great striker. Just didn't really wasn't as prolific as he probably should have been. He came with a great record and didn't quite get that. Second season, now he's bedded into the Premier League, he might do a bit better. He was a very effective player. It always looked like he was trying very hard. It always looked like he was getting into sort of the right places. But just the end product wasn't there for whatever reason for him over the course of the season. He wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't probably as good as he should have been, or even felt he should have been, I imagine. Danny Ings, however, is a proven goal-scoring talent in the Premier League when he's fit. The good news, of course, for Aston Villa is if Danny Ings is the lead striker and he does get injured again, they do have a competent striker to come in the form of Ollie Watkins, which Southampton didn't really have, unfortunately, last year, which is why they went from being in the top end of the table to, quite frankly, if they'd had a few less points at the start of that season, likely to be relegated. Good news for Southampton fans last year was they had just enough points to not really be feeling that in danger even towards the end of last season. Largely because of Fulham just deciding not to get any points in the last few weeks. But there was a couple of moments about 6 or 7 weeks from the end where Southampton had the look of a team that might just accidentally slip in if Fulham decided to play football. They didn't, and Sutton were fine. We'll get to them eventually. But Villa, 6th. Even without Grealish, I think Buendia didn't really do it for Norwich in the Premier League last time we were there. Did it very much for Norwich in the Championship last year. I think he's had a season in the Premier League obviously before. He's found his mojo again in the Championship. Might just go a little bit better for him this time round. Again, I like Bailey on the other side, and those two providing Danny Ings is a very tasty prospect indeed. 7th, Leicester. They're not going to be any lower than that. Worth noting, Aston Villa and Leicester have exactly the same points in my predictions. It's on goal difference, which is largely arbitrary because I'm just plugging in random results. The margin of victories, I consider it a little bit, but not massively so. Like unless there's a matchup that's like Norwich versus Manchester City, where it's obviously going to be a multi-goal victory for Manchester City, probably. Then a lot of the predictions are like 1 or 2 goal margins. So Goal difference in here could easily go either way. Same way with Aston Villa and Leicester. Could easily go either way because they're on the same points on this prediction, so it could go either way. 3 goals separate them. 3 arbitrary goals separate them. Could be Leicester, could be Aston Villa. But I think they will be 5th and 6th. I think they'll fall just that little bit short of Spurs, who have... I think Spurs will just have a stronger start to the season, and they did what they needed to do at the end of the season to sneak 7th, the barest minimum. The fact they're in the Europa Conference League probably allows them to rotate a little bit more as well in Europe, which might make their Premier League campaign that little bit stronger as well. That's the reason for Tottenham just edging those other 2. 8th is arguably my boldest prediction. Leeds in 8th. They did very well last year. I think they'll kick on from last year. They've made a couple of good transactions. Harrison permanently. Firpo is a great left back. It's an upgrade on left back from before, in my opinion. So anything that upgrades the team from last year, from Leeds' perspective, Calvin Phillips went to the Euros, did very well in the Euros. If he takes that through back to Leeds again, that's only going to make Leeds even better. Leeds were 9th last year. They were 3 points away from finishing that Europa Conference League in their first season. Not as bold as I thought now. I thought they were slightly further down last year. They were 9th. I knew they did well. I forgot just how well they were until I just double-checked that. It's a one-place jump for Leeds, in my opinion. Not that bold a prediction in the end. What's possibly a little bolder is Wolves in 9th, considering they weren't that good last year. I don't really know what happened to Wolves other than the Jimenez injury last year. But Jimenez is back. I don't know how effective he's going to be. He's been scoring in pre-season. I don't know how effective he's going to be over the course of a 38-game-week season, where it's a little bit more competitive. But I think we'll get a bit of a bounce back from Wolves this year. Can't really explain it more than that, to be honest. I think they very much underperformed last year. I think if they get back to their former selves, where they were in this sort of position challenging for Europe the season before, yeah, 9th. 10th is Arsenal. Can't really put them any lower than that. One thing I'll say now that I've put Arsenal in 10th is, on this World Football.net predictor thingamajig, after 38 games, Leeds, Wolves and Arsenal all had 60 points. All 3 of them. So again, much like the Aston Villa Leicester situation, would not be surprised if these 3 are 8th, 9th and 10th in a different order. And I would claim that as a victory, because they are on the same points. The goals are largely arbitrary, although the goal difference for Arsenal is a lot less than the other 2 for some reason. I'm not going back through my predictions to work out why that's happened, but Ben White for Arsenal might improve Arsenal, of course, defensively as well, so maybe there's a few less goals to be conceded perhaps this year for Arsenal. We'll see. We'll see how that one goes. Not really much else to talk about Arsenal at this point. Losing Joe Willock to Newcastle is a boo for Newcastle. That's about it for Arsenal. West Ham in 11th. They're in Europe. They don't really have the squad depth for Europe. They're not going to do as well this year. Kind of as simple as that. Also, if they don't buy a striker, they are royally stuffed. This is actually a bit of an asterisk. If they don't buy a striker, they'll be further down. I've put them in 11th on the basis that they aren't going to sign a striker, just a striker, really, any striker, just someone else. Because Antonio's a decent player. He's good for fantasy football purposes. I don't think he's good enough to be a European team's lead striker. He's also injured a lot, so really, they need 2 strikers, quite frankly. But if they get one, 11th. If they don't get any, probably lower. I don't really say much else about West Ham, because they've not really done much else, to be fair, so far. Also, if they keep hold of some of their better players, that's key. There was a couple of rumours, a couple of the big teams might have been sniffing around Jared Bowen at one point. They were the rumours. Those rumours are sort of passed now without any traction, so I think they might be alright in that regard in terms of losing players, but for now, 11th, they're in Europe. Enjoy it. Enjoy the campaign. I think they'll do alright. I don't think they'll get to the proper latter stages, but I think they'll be alright. The group, at the least. 12th is Everton. Where did Everton end up last year? 10th. Wasn't as bad as I thought it was for them. 12th. They've hired a manager that their fan base hate, which is a bold strategy. We'll see how it plays out for them, Con. But, yeah, they've not strengthened. Ancelotti's leaving is only going to weaken them. Although Benitez is a great manager, of course. But Ancelotti leaving might damage the team. James Rodriguez was obviously injured for a fair bit of last season anyway. But there's rumours that because Ancelotti's left that James Rodriguez might leave as well. Because that was the main reason why he came in the first place. And if they don't replace that kind of talent, might be in trouble. Richarlison did well at the Olympics, but because he was at the Olympics, he's probably a little bit tired to start the season. So it's going to be interesting. Calvert-Lewin, fantastic talent. Don't really know what happened to him last year. He started very well, and then, well, that was it. 12th. Newcastle 13th. Newcastle were 12th last year. Yeah, just in case you didn't realise, Newcastle were 12th last year. This is technically, putting them in 13th, I put the team that I support worse than they were last year. Despite the fact the squad was down to bare bones for the entirety of December, not that anyone noticed because everyone was focused on Van Dijk being injured for Liverpool and all the other injuries hitting Liverpool at the same time. Newcastle didn't really have any players for about a month and a half, and people criticise us for not playing attacking football when we had no attacking players left. But then, towards the end of the season, players like Alan Saint-Maximin came in, we loaned Joe Willock, and suddenly Newcastle scored goals and started winning games again. It's amazing how that happens. We'll be 13th. We've got the same squad. We haven't done anything. We might be buying Joe Willock permanently. So realistically, I can't put us any higher because we've not done any good business, any further good business, and we've not lost anyone. So 13th. Also worth noting, Everton and Newcastle in this position, same number of points as well. So Everton and Newcastle, either way around. There's a bit of a jump to 14th point-wise. Point-wise from 14th down, they all have relegation-worthy point tallies. It's 32 for Norwich. Everything below here is less than 32. Like I say, we're doing this prediction thing. There's a bit of an exaggeration at both ends when it comes to the total points, because you're not getting those surprise results as often when you're making predictions at the start of a season for the entire season. Norwich are 14th. There's not a lot separating 14th through to 17th. I'll say that right now. I think they'll do better. But again, these four here, any order. They're not on the same points. So I'm not going to claim it as a moral victory if these four are correct in a different order. But Norwich 14th, they'll just edge being best of the new teams. I think they'll do better than they were last time. They've made some savvy transactions, in my opinion. They have spent money this time round. They only lost Jamal Lewis and they've lost Brendier. That's a big one in fairness. I think they're better for the relegation. And I think they'll be back and I think they'll be just fine. The fact they're in 14th here kind of implies I'm thinking they'll be more than just fine. But all of these four have the same category, which is I think they'll be just all right. Speaking of, Brentford. They've come up. They've made some good business as well, in my opinion. Coming up, they're a well-run club in general. Much like Norwich, these are two very well-run clubs in terms of their squads and bringing people in and selling people on. These are two very well-run clubs at the moment. Norwich and Brentford. Norwich with a relegation and coming back up. I think they're a little bit more wiser for it. Brentford, I think they've been building towards this for a little bit longer. Norwich have had to deal with sorting out debts from the last time they're in Premier League and all that jazz. I think Brentford have been building towards this for a little bit longer. Again, I think they might be just fine. As in, a couple of points possibly above the drop, or a couple of wins just above the drop. I like the look of them. I like the business they've done so far. They've just signed a Wissa, I think it is, from Lorient. Interesting talent, maybe. I think they'll be all right. Not many teams left. Brighton, 16th. Unless Brighton start matching their XG, they're going to be in trouble. They just didn't score enough goals last year, and it's going to be the same situation. As far as I can tell, they've not really changed much of their squad between this year and last year. The strikers are the same. So I don't really see how they're going to be any better than they were last year, especially if they've lost a defender, a key defender. Now, there is an asterisk on Brighton in that regard. Getting £50 million for Ben White, depending on how they reinvest that money, will depend on how Brighton end up. If they invest that wisely, they might be a little bit higher. They might be 14th and comfortably 14th, put it that way, or in the Everton Newcastle block. I don't think they're going to be top half, even with good investment, but they might be slightly less in danger if they invest that money wisely. If the investments don't go well, then could be a little bit lower, actually. But as things stand right now, with the squad they have right now, 16th. Similar situation with Burnley, to be honest, although they haven't got investment money. As far as I can tell, they've not really done much. They brought in one person for money, and that's a championship defender. So that says a lot about them right now. No new major attacking talent coming in. So, but Burnley are Burnley, and this might be the year their luck runs out. This might be the year their gambit of not being the worst, their gambit of not being one of the three worst teams every season might finally run out. But with what I predicted so far, they just about survive. Ahead of, this one might surprise you with the three remaining teams, Watford. Probably 3 managers later, 18th. by the end of the season. I mean, they've been here before. They've sacked their manager, and they've been relegated. Whether they learn from that remains to be seen, because I'm pretty certain they've done it twice now in recent years. So, they've come up, not started particularly well, sacked their manager, continued not to do particularly well, sacked their manager, continued not to do particularly well, and got relegated. Got promoted, and then did exactly the same thing again, and got relegated again. Now they've been promoted again. So, whether they've learned from that, third time's the charm, perhaps. One thing I will say is, I think this is the most likely season in quite a while where there's a good chance at least 2 quote-unquote established Premier League sides go down. This might be the first season where at least 2 promoted sides stay up in a little while. Because the remaining 2 are, get this in the right order, Palace, and by virtue of elimination, Southampton. We'll start with Palace. Palace is a big asterisk one. I predicted Palace to go down quite a lot recently, but the Roy Hodgson factor is what kept them up. I always underestimated the wily Roy. So without Roy Hodgson, with Vieira, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to watch them. To be fair, they've spent a reasonable amount of money considering it's Crystal Palace. I don't know where this money's come from for them, to be honest, but 21 million on a Chelsea under-23 defender, unproven. Joaquin Anderson, relegated from Fulham. Elise, Championship level, might be ready for the step up. We don't really know. It's interesting. The business they've done is interesting. They've loaned another Chelsea under-23 as well in Conor Gallagher. So obviously there was a massive batch of players who left at the end of last year for them. The wage structure of Palace was absurd, so maybe losing those players was a good thing. But I don't know. Palace are a big question mark, but for completely different reasons than normal. Southampton, right now, Southampton are my most confident certainty of going down. Palace might be 19th behind Watford, but I think they're actually the more likely of the 2 to stay up over Watford. They may be 18th and 19th on here. I've just put them in the order that they came in at the end of everything. But yeah, Palace, I don't know really what's going to happen in Palace, but I think Southampton and Watford are the most 2 likely to go down of these 3. Because, well, we saw what happened with Southampton last year. They lost Danny Ings and did woefully for the remainder of the season. They've lost Danny Ings permanently. Whether they replace him with a player that's going to be as prolific, as good, as getting the goals as Danny Ings was, remains to be seen. They've lost Ryan Bertrand, one left back. Very good, probably dressing room figure as well. So I worry for Southampton. In fact, I think I've actually missed the official news of Adam Armstrong coming in because it has been listed as an official transfer now. So that's not goodbye today, seemingly. Adam Armstrong, former Newcastle talent, funnily enough. There's a very good chance, by the way, that former Newcastle talent comes back to haunt Newcastle this year with Ivan Toney returning to the Premier League with Brentford and Adam Armstrong with Southampton. That could be fun. It took a long while to be a proven goalscorer in the Championship. He's been down there for a fair few years now, Adam Armstrong, and last year was the first season where he could be counted as prolific. So the fact that's now triggered Southampton to buy him for what apparently is £16 million. I mean, with English premium, that's not possibly that bad a deal, but at the same time, if it took him that long to get going in the Championship, Premier League could step up from that. We'll see. They have replaced Ryan Bertrand, it is worth noting, but I worry about them. I'm saying that as if I actually support them, but they've lost their key striker in Danny Ings, and they've lost, in my opinion, who was their second best goalkeeper in Angus Gunn. So I also think one of the main things for Southampton is working out who their first choice goalkeeper is, because I'm still not sure. I maintain that Fraser Forster's their best goalkeeper. I think they think McCarthy is, and they sold Angus Gunn to Norwich anyway. So that might be a big point for them to work out. And if they maybe sort that out, and maybe they actually buy in an absolute 100% starting goalkeeper before the transfer window shuts, Southampton might be doing a little bit better. If they actually get in a quality goalkeeper, maybe we'll revisit this. But of course, I'm making this video before the transfer window has completely shut, before the first day of the season. Whilst I've said there's some key asterisks on potential moves that we already know might be happening, there's obviously just one major asterisk over the entire thing, depending on who people bring in before the deadline. Looking at you, Newcastle, who've done sod all so far, other than maybe get a deal in place for Willock, even if it's not been confirmed yet. But there's some key teams that need to do some major business, have to do some major business, I think, before the transfer window closes. West Ham, striker. Southampton, sort of did their striker already. Burnley, really, need to do something. Although I don't know if they've got any money to do it. Same with Brighton. They do have the money for it. Arsenal definitely need to do something as well, I think. And if teams like Arsenal do some good business before the transfer window closes, I can see them maybe edging these two, possibly getting close to these lot. Same with West Ham, if they do some good business, maybe getting a bit closer to this lot, although again, they've got the European distraction. Newcastle, if they get some good players, if they get a couple of good players in, might be a little bit closer to this back. Newcastle, not likely to get anywhere near close to that lot, but maybe a couple of places. I think for teams like Norwich and Brentford, I don't think there's a lot. I think the ceiling for them is probably probably here anyway. Teams like Brighton, again, similarly. I don't think the ceiling is that much higher. Crystal Palace, the absolute wildcard in my opinion. They're in 19th right now, but new manager, unproven players, could go either way for them. Most certainty is this top four, because that was actually the biggest gap point-wise, the top 4 to 5th. This is the biggest certainty I have out of the entire lot. So just a quick run through the end. City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, Spurs, Villa, Leicester, Leeds, Wolves, Arsenal, West Ham, Everton, Newcastle, Norwich, Brentford, Brighton, Burnley, and then relegated Watford, Palace, and Southampton. Also, again, a quick apology for Leicester fans. If you watch my How Well Do I Know the UK video, apologies for getting Leicester in its entirety there. Maybe I should put you 7th. Considering they're on the same points as Aston Villa, maybe I should put them 6th, just as an apology. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you've seen and want to see more, I do Football Manager videos most of the time. I've recently signed Jack Grealish for Tenerife, so if you want to see how that particular thing goes on, Manchester City did steal my thunder though a little bit. If you want to see how that goes on, feel free to subscribe and watch the Tenerife save as well. There might be a large piece of, by the time this video goes live, there might be actually even a bigger name coming into Tenerife at that stage. So like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you for watching. Until next time. Ta-ra.